The Galactic Council's Xenobiology Wing had seen many mysteries in its 3,000 years of operation, but none quite like the human called Arya. She sat in the observation chamber, unaware of the dozen species watching her through reinforced glass, their appendages, tendrils, and sensory organs all focused on the impossible scene before them. Around her feet lay 3 Varkothian alpha cubs, apex predators whose kind had terrorized the Outer Rim for millennia, purring like domesticated pets. "This is unprecedented," chittered Dr. Zeloth, his crystalline carapace flickering with confused bioluminescence. Those cubs should have torn her apart the moment she entered their space. The eldest cub, Rurik, raised his massive head as a Thoraxian researcher approached the chamber door. A low rumbling growl emanated from his throat, a sound that made even the armored guards step back. His 6 eyes, each capable of seeing into spectrums unknown to most species, fixed on the potential threat with predatory focus. But when Arya absently reached down to scratch behind his ear ridge, Rurik melted back into docility, his tail sweeping contentedly across the floor. 17 different scholars, muttered Commander Zane of the Ithorian fleet, all 4 of his hands gesturing in exasperation. 17! Behavioral scientists, evolutionary biologists, psionic specialists, and not one can explain this. The story had begun 3 cycles ago when a human transport ship crashed on Varkoth Prime. Arya, a xenobotanist on her way to catalog flora on a frontier world, had been the sole survivor. She'd stumbled, injured and disoriented, into a Varkothian breeding den, a place where even the bravest warriors refused to tread. What happened next defied every known law of xenobiology. The alpha cubs, orphaned when their mother fell to territory wars, should have killed her instantly. Varkothians were not simply dangerous. They were the nightmare that other predators had nightmares about. Their young were born with fully developed hunting instincts, capable of bringing down prey twice their size within weeks of birth. Instead, they had protected her. When the rescue team finally located the crash site, they found Arya asleep against Rurik's flank. The 3 cubs arranged in a defensive perimeter around her. 2 Varkothian war parties lay dead at the den's entrance, killed by the very cubs they'd come to claim. "Play it again," demanded Dr. Zeloth, mandibles clicking with scientific frustration. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the moment a Krellian ambassador had attempted to approach Arya during her quarantine. The cubs had moved as one, positioning themselves between the human and the insectoid dignitary. Their growls had harmonized into a sound so primally terrifying that the ambassador had fainted, his chitinous shell cracking from the stress response. Yet when Arya turned around, she'd simply laughed, that peculiar human expression of joy, and told them they were good boys. "Perhaps it's pheromonal," suggested a Venturi scientist, her gaseous form swirling with thought. "Humans emit chemical signatures that—" "We tested that hypothesis on day 1, Zeloth interrupted. "Negative. We've analyzed everything. Her biochemistry, her neural patterns, her quantum resonance signature. There is nothing exceptional about this human. But there was, and they all knew it. They simply couldn't measure it." In the chamber, Arya was reading from a datapad, occasionally glancing at the cubs with that soft expression humans called affection. Rurik's massive head rested on her lap, a position that should have been physically uncomfortable given his predatory skull structure and her fragile human bones. Yet both seemed perfectly content. "What if?" ventured a young Korthan intern, his scales flushing with the boldness of his suggestion. "What if it's not about what she is, but what she does?" The senior scientist turned to regard him with varying degrees of skepticism. "Explain," commanded Zeloth. "Every species here has studied the Varkothians as threats, as weapons, as problems to be solved. We've dissected their biology, mapped their aggression patterns, developed countermeasures. But the human—" he gestured toward Arya. "She just treats them like friends." "Absurd," scoffed Commander Zane. "Emotional attachment doesn't override millions of years of evolutionary programming." As if to contradict him, the chamber door suddenly breached. An automated malfunction sent it sliding open, and a maintenance drone wandered in, its sensors clicking. The 3 cubs erupted into motion. Rurik was fastest, placing himself directly between the drone and Arya with a snarl that literally vibrated the observation glass. The other 2 cubs flanked her sides, their hackles raised, juvenile fangs bared. Arya looked up from her reading, noticed the drone, and laughed again. Guys, it's just a cleaning bot. Stand down. She stood, walked past Rurik, who remained tense but didn't stop her, and deactivated the drone herself. Then she returned to her seat, and the cubs settled around her once more, their aggression evaporating as if it had never existed. The scholars watched in stunned silence. Impossible, whispered Dr. Zeloth. She overrode their threat response with words, just words. But it wasn't just words, and somewhere deep in their analytical minds they knew it. Humans had walked among stars for barely a century, yet they'd already become legendary for one inexplicable trait. They bonded with everything. They'd tried to make pets of Rigelian acid wasps. They'd befriended sentient star whales. They'd somehow convinced a hive mind of warrior drones to stop their conquest. Because a human child had started a garden on their ship, and the drones found it interesting where other species saw threats. Humans saw friends waiting to happen. Where others calculated risk, humans offered trust. It wasn't logical. It wasn't scientific. It was simply, impossibly, human. We need to study this further, Dr. Zeloth announced, though his tone suggested he already knew it was futile. In the chamber, Arya had fallen asleep again, her head resting against Rurik's side. The massive alpha cub, who by all rights should have been the terror of the sector, simply watched over her with an expression that even xenobiologists could recognize. Protection, loyalty, perhaps even love. No scholar could explain why. But somewhere in the vast complexity of the universe, in the space between data and understanding, humans had discovered a truth that transcended science. Sometimes, kindness was its own answer, and the alpha cubs, in their ancient predatory wisdom, understood what the scholars could not.